Having never played past the Owen series, a while ago I set my mind to discovering the Pokemon games I missed out on by nuzlocking one of each generation until I had gone through them all. But then I forgot to press record when I was playing Yellow, so instead, my name is Nez and welcome to my Pokemon Crystal Nuzlocke. This is the first video for a series that I'm running down on Twitch, so if you want to see this kind of action happening live, you can follow me there. The link's gonna be down in the description. A Nuzlocke challenge is a way of playing Pokemon in which the player self-imposes additional rules to make it more masochistic. If a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead and has to be released or kept in the box without being used in battle again. You can only catch the first encounter in each new area, and you have to name every Pokemon you catch so it hurts extra when you accidentally kill one. To make this even more of a challenge, we extended the rule set a little bit. For important battles, there was a cap on the level and number of Pokemon we can bring, excluding the Elite Four. That would be way too much bullshit. Also, for the sake of transparency, in this challenge I did not use set mode. I did it in future runs, but yeah, for this one we're running baby mode. And with the ground rules out of the way, it's time to start our adventure. The story begins in the rather unremarkable Newbark Town. It's like Pallet Town if it suffered from a severe case of middle child syndrome, which honestly, same. We wake up in our room, receive the Pokegear from Mother, and make our way to the lab. From the corner of our eye, we can spot the most meticulous child criminal in the whole Johto region. But we decide to ignore him. No one wants to be pushed. We are greeted by Professor Elm, who wants us to raise a Pokemon, to which we say, yes Pokemon, we do want to play Pokemon. We proceed to pick the best starter for Gen 2, no debate, this is a monarchy, I see no god up in here other than me. So with Erwin the Totodile by our side, we set off to Mr. Pokemon's house to be Elm's errand boy. The Mr. with the fancy hat gave us a mystery egg, and the OG tree professor gave us his brand new Pokédex! As we stepped foot outside again, Professor Elm called us in panic, urging us to come back as soon as possible. On our way there, we bump into our peeping Tom rival, who after saying nice things about her mother, challenged us to a battle. By the way, did I mention that the rules only apply after getting Pokeballs? Yeah, ignore the level advantage here. Completely legit Nuzlocke. Nevertheless, the battle was very straightforward. Our rival sent out his Chikorita, and with a couple of turns, Erwin scratched her a new haircut. Now with the ball Chikorita, our rival deja vu's in the distance. As for me and Erwin, we make our way back to Elm's. When we arrived, the professor was talking to a Popo that asked us to identify this mischievous 10-year-old. We named him Chat, because we're original. After that interaction, we give the egg to Elm, and his assistant hands us 5 Pokeballs, meaning it's time for the Nuzlocke to actually start. Now it's time to get some Pokemon. Hey, do you want me to show you how to catch a Pokemon? No, fuck you. Route 29 is where we get our first encounter. A level 2 Pidgey we decided to call Pickles, which was a recycled name from Yellow, on our first catch. Yeah. We headed north to Route 46 in search of a Geodude to help us in Falkner's gym, and RNG was on our side because that's what we got. Welcome to the team, Potato. In Route 30 we get a Caterpie which Chat named Rebellion, and right soon after, in Route 31, we get Sag, our second Caterpie and first duplicate, doomed to never be used ever. In Dark Cave, Ozzy the Zubat joined the party, and during the nighttime we went into Sprout Tower to get acquainted with Gathilda the Ghastly. Sprout Tower wasn't done with us though, and as we were clearing the trainers I decided to greet some XP onto Ozzy since I really wanted a Crobat, which ultimately led to the first casualty of the run as we had to sacrifice Rebellion. But who cares, we got another Caterpie. Now with the tower clear, it was time to fight Falkner. With Erwin up front and Potato as his backup, we challenged the Violet City gym leader in our first badge battle. Falkner led with Pidgey, which allowed Erwin to become a very mad boy. The strat was to throw a Rage Tantrum, dealing more and more damage for when we faced the Pidgeotto. As it came out though, it gave us quite a scare by hitting 2 Gust crits in a row. Nevertheless, Erwin had a berry in case things got dicey, and we were able to leave Violet City unscathed. Next up was Bugsy, the bug-type gym leader in Azalea. As we made our way down there, in a training session, Sag went from Caterpie to Metapod and from that to Butterfree, which is a pretty decent mon at this stage of the game. We also got Nene the Bellsprout and Fabio, a repeat Geodude. In Azalea, it was time to kick some rocket ass. We went down the well where Kurt had fallen and couldn't get up, and we quickly and easily cleaned up the Slowpoke tail-selling maniacs. Bugsy was a rather uneventful fight. None of his Pokemon were a match for our team of Potato, Pickles, and Erwin. Potato used Rock Throw to deal with the Metapod and Scyther, and I was feeling so bad not giving the others a chance to fight that I sent out Pickles to make a quick meal out of the Kakuna. That's 2 badges under our belt. Speaking of uneventful fights, outside of Ilex Forest, Chat was waiting for us to battle once again. Much like the fight against Bugsy, there was not much to tell. Sag wiped both Ghastly and Zubat with confusion, and as Bayleaf came out, our Butterfree used Sleep Powder for Pickles to make a nest. Up next though was a character who does not receive a lot of love. Considered to be a run killer, Goldenrod's gym leader Whitney and especially her milk tank have been the dread of many Nuzlocks and the reason behind God knows how many resets. During our preparation, Pickles decided to change from a bird to a bird with cooler hair and Erwin became GigaChad. Look at that marvelous jawline. Nothing could ever go wrong with that marvelous jawline. Even so, looking at the tools at my disposal, the situation seemed pretty dire. I had no moves that were super effective against normal and I could only use 2 Pokemon. I had to make a decision and go for the strongest duo I could arrange, so Erwin and Potato were the chosen ones. A proper throwback to Falkner's gym. We approached Whitney and so the battle began. Pretty much like Pidgey in the first gym, Whitney's Clefairy was seen as nothing more than a setup for Erwin's rage. It shouldn't have posed any kind of threat, but the first turn reminded me of something that made me sweat. Upon the clouds, the RNG gods were looking closely, entertained as our Pokemon measured forces. See, Clefairy has Metronome, and with Metronome, all you can really do is pray for a bad roll. Sure, this first turn it was just a double kick, but who knows what is going to throw our way next. Erwin continued raging through, as Clefairy's Metronome gave her some health with Moonlight. But right before Erwin dealt the killing blow, the Moonchild used her last Metronome, sending out a Fire Spin and trapping Erwin, forcing him in battle with the beast he was about to face. Miltank came out with no compassion. Fuming from the death of her fallen comrade, she charged a straight-to-the-point rollout crit against Erwin. We used Rage again, yet it only dealt a couple of scratches. The move had barely hurt her, dealing a mere fourth of her total health. At this point, I feared not only for Erwin, but for the whole entire run. But looking back, there was no point fearing for Erwin. With Miltank outspeeding Erwin, he was dead to the next rollout. It was impossible to switch out because Fire Spin was still trapping him. Potions could stall, but eventually this bulldozer of a Pokemon would flatten Erwin to the ground like a Lacoste embroidery stitch. All we could do was hope for Miltank to somehow miss. She showed no mercy. This one hurt. It's never easy to lose a Pokemon, let alone your starter. In a way, Erwin was the link between the me from today and a much younger version of myself that would always pick Totodile in his childhood Gen 2 runs. The kid who would have fun beating the Elite Four with a level 100 Pidgeot. Not only that, but nothing guaranteed me that this would be the only loss of the fight. For all I could know, this monster's gym could also take Potato's life and force me to start over. So, Potato was drawn in. He had no other choice but to survive the stage 4 rollout that awaited him. That was the only way for the run to continue. And as the attack came, Miltank missed. I felt cheated. If only this would have happened the turn before, Erwin would have still been around, living to tell the tale. But the deed was done. The 5 stages of grief would have to wait until the aftermath of the battle. At that point, what mattered was that the rollout got reset. The damage is not as scary as it was before, and with Miltank in the yellow zone, I was certain Geodude would take her down. After a whiffed rock throw, a magnitude and a tackle, Potato took down the run killer. Whitney was in tears. I was very close to that as well. I was happy for the victory and being able to progress, but this didn't feel like a proper win. Not after the loss of Erwin. We now continued towards Ekrutik. The team situation was looking grim and needed to show some improvement. First, this weird looking tree was blocking our way and got all aggro when we gave it some water. We threw a Pokeball at his face and we got Morningwood, which is clearly not an innuendo but the name of the first town in the generic fantasy MMORPG. Continuing with the funny and incredibly mature jokes, in Burn Tower we found Coughing and named him Ballsack. From our daycare egg, an Elekid hatched into this world. She was a cutie, that's why we called her Patootie. In Goldenrod, Bill gave us Livio the Eevee, and finally we suited up and walked into Game Corner for a Pokemon and an overpriced drink. With 100 credits, we got an Abra and named it after my friend Roar, who has a gambling problem and therefore makes this sound like an intervention. We also got a couple of evolutions under our belt. Potato became a Graveler, Gothilda evolved into Haunter, and Roar, our heavy hitter, became a mighty Kadabra. With a team composed of Potato, Sag, Gothilda, and our ace Roar, we were facing a team of 4 of the Gengar evolutionary line. Aiming for full offense, I decided to send Roar from the get-go. 4 Psybeams, charged by how busted Kadabra's special attack is, and it should be enough to cast the Phantoms back to the Shadow Realm. Morty's speech starts, and here comes the battle. Ghastly in, Ghastly vanquished. Haunter in, Haunter gone. Gengar in... Oh. Defying all expectations, Morty's ace lived Roar's Psywave on a mere fragment of its health bar. With a twisted smile on its face, the ghost refused to die again. Roar asked, "Why do I hear boss music?" And as the beep boops of the Game Boy Color grew louder and louder, the arena was filled with the darkness of Gengar's Shadow Ball, devouring our Kadabra's life. Another game-changing loss. This would call for a drastic change in the way that we would approach the later phases of the journey, but first, Sag has some unfinished business. On her gym debut, our Butterfree's Confusion took down what was remaining of the murderous Gengar, and as expected, the final Haunter was not much of a threat, being 2 KO'd by Confusion. And with that, badge number 4 was added to the collection. Now at a crossroad, we went left as our first stop was Olivine City and its lighthouse where Jasmine was tending to a sick Ampharos. While we were grabbing the medicine for Amphi, we caught a couple of Pokemon, the most noticeable ones being a Tentacool named Splatoon and 2 Magikarps, Mantracarp and Cursola's Sadface. This is where the duplicate's claws became broken. It was super easy to access the S-tier Gyarados, but I didn't want to change the rules in the middle of the playthrough, so I kept going with it. Speaking of Gyarados, Mantracarp wasn't a dumb little koi fish for long and quickly became a scary noodle. We also found Raikou like 4 times, so that's cool. With both leaders now available in their respective gyms, it was time to face them. We got up to Chuck and he showed us that he invested his whole skill tree on strength attributes, kinda like what I did when I played PoE. Cthulhu was sent to deal with the first opponent. See, it's hard to connect a punch when the target doesn't really have a physical form, and Chuck's Primeape found out the hard way. Knowing only fighting and normal type moves, the enraged monkey flailed aimlessly at the air trying to hit the ghost that was slowly chipping away damage with repeated nightshades. On the other hand, Poliwrath was a big head scratcher for our planning phase. It was not only a pretty well-rounded Pokemon, but it also had a very synergetic moveset to back it up. Our solution was to use Mantracarp's defensive prowess and the damage consistency of Dragon Rage to seal the deal in about 3 turns. I say in about 3 turns because as Gyarados was about to finish off the Tadpole, Poliwrath connected the Dynamic Punch, confusing our Pokemon and enabling it to hurt itself in confusion, get hit by a Blind Hypnosis, and sleep for 5 turns where it got hit by 2 out of 4 Dynamic Punches plus a Surf. I even had to use a Super Potion to guarantee Mantracarp's survival. But alas, on the 7th day, one last strength brought us the victory in Signwood. With Pickles' wings soaring above the blue waters of the ocean, next stop was Olivine and Jasmine. Which, honestly, there's not much to write home about. Her team is very, very weak and not much of a threat at all. Potato was the ideal candidate to deal with Jasmine's chairs, and Mantracarp still to deal with the Steelix. And that's how we obtained badges 5 and 6. 2 more and onto the Elite 4 we go. In Lake of Rage, we headbutted a special tree and unveiled Bethesda the Pineco. Patootie also thought, you know what, I don't want to be a kid anymore, so she hit puberty and became Electabuzz. From there, we proceeded to defeat the Red Gyarados and helped Lance with his Team Rocket investigation, out of fear of being murdered by his Dragonite. Almost as easy as the Rockets though was the fight against Pryce. His biggest nuisance was the fact that we had to grind 2 Pokemon to the level cap. So we grabbed Cursola's Sadface and Bethesda and went all over Johto to give them the necessary levels. Right as we hit the level cap with it, Bethesda became a not so mighty fortress. But hey, it will do. Pryce himself was simple. Patootie dealt with the Seal and Dugong, and Cursola took down Piloswine. At this point of the game, Team Rocket was doing some shenanigans over at Radio Tower, which actually makes me realize I never really understood what their plan was during the Gen 2 games. We cleared the grunts on the left side of the tower and fought the Sasibaka Director on the top floor to obtain the basement key to go to, you guessed it, the basement. There was a problem though. Down those depths, chat was waiting for us, and our main team had every single one of them exceeded the level cap for that fight. That means that the only logical solution was to assemble a scrappy team for this run to continue legitimate. So, as our Nuzlocke turns into a Trashlocke, I would like you all to give a round of applause to Fabio, Ballsack, Gathilda, Sag, and Threepeat. As our rival sends out his Golbat, we lead with Fabio. A couple of rock throws should do the trick, but right in the first turn, we are hit by Confuse Ray. Fabio though is a very self-assured Pebble and not only hits the first rock throw, but also a second one, right after being hit by a Bite. Chat then decides to use Meganium due to the type advantage, but we take this chance to also switch into Coughing, which prompted this little fun interaction.
I just realized this might have been a bad idea. Ballsack might be in danger. Meganium is so threatening compared to my little Ballsack. I did not say that.
Meganium goes for Body Slam to try and counteract the oozing ball. Luckily, none of the strikes paralyzed my little Ballsack, who instead poisoned the Flower Dino with a hit from Sludge, guaranteeing a 2-hit KO. From there, it was very straightforward. Fabio dealt with the Magnemite, Haunter, and Sneasel, which was actually a pretty close call as I didn't realize that I was in crit range. Oh no, you'd have lost a repeat Pokemon, no. We then grabbed our main team back again and finished off the Rockets in order to go to Clair's gym. Having no ice types on our team, Patootie would have to do the heavy lifting for the Blackthorn's Dragon Leader. While we were in Goldenrod, we got the TM for Ice Punch and she was ready to throw hands. Alongside there stood Mantracarp, Splatoon, and finally Bethesda. And so, above the scorching lava pools of Blackthorn's gym, we approached the one separating us from a shot at the Elite Four. It was time for Clair. She led Dragonair as we sent out Patootie. To boost the power of her punch, we made her hold Never Melt Ice. That way, we could maximize our damage and greatly reduce the risk of the battle. As the fast mon she is, our Electabuzz dealt the first strike to the first opponent, and it barely survived. With nothing but a hair of HP, the Noodle lived long enough to dispatch a Thunder Wave that paralyzed Patootie. Had it been any other of our team members, that would have been just fine since they were all holding Paralysis Cure Berries, but due to her holding Never Melt Ice, that was not an option. This would mean that not only were we going to move slower than our opponents, we would also have to fight against the random dice roll of being full para, a bad prospect for someone who's not very gifted RNG wise. Confident in Patootie's ability to take at least some damage from the Dragonair, we decided to risk it and stay in. A quarter of her health disappeared as she was slammed on the floor, and, of course, the odds were against us because the 25% chance of being fully paralyzed went through. Still, out of crit range, we stood our ground to receive another slam and attempt to deliver a second Ice Punch to Dragonair. This time, everything went down as planned and the Dragonair fainted. Now a level stronger, an Ice Punch took down the second Dragonair, but not without taking damage from yet another slam. This meant it was time for a switch in. As Clair sent her third Dragonair, Todd Howard demanded his yearly paycheck as Bethesda stormed the battlefield. I have to give it to Bethesda because she really kept true to her name. Her first rollout worked as well as any of their game titles on launch. As in, it didn't? Get it? It's a joke. It's a joke, guys. So Dragonair started chipping away some damage by using Ice Beam. Luckily, the second rollout started to do its thing, and for the following 3 turns, this exchange of damage kept ramping until the Dragonair had been trampled and Bethesda was at around half health. The final obstacle came in the form of Kingdra, and it for sure came out swinging. As Bethesda was readying her 4th rollout, Kingdra outsped the Bug Ball and with a fast, clinical surf, took the remaining half of Fortress's health. Much like Fallout 76, this was the fall of Bethesda. From that point on, the battle was very strange to say the least. We sent out Splatoon and used Supersonic to confuse the Kingdra. The following turns were a mix of the Seahorse earning itself in confusion twice and using Smokescreen once. During this whole time, we were slowly getting our HP bar down by spamming Acid. That was until Clair used a Hyper Potion, which we took the chance to switch in Magikarp to finish the job with a couple of hits of strength. We did have a pretty big scare though, because after not hurting us for about 6 or 7 turns, Kingdra landed a meaty crit Hyper Beam on our Gyarados, taking exactly 100 HP away just like that. Nevertheless, the final hit went through and we got our 8th and last gym badge. Except that instead of giving it to us, Clair went full holier than thou, saying that we were not ready to the Elite Four and we needed to go to a cave and whatnot. Whatever. We went to the cave, Old Man did the BuzzFeed quiz, called Clair a bitch, got a Tutini, called it Noodle, and goddammit Clair, if you don't give him the badge, I will call your beloved Lance-sama and he will spank your ass, not in the way that you want him to. Alright, now with 8 badges under our belt, it was finally time to head towards the Indigo Plateau. Before getting there though, it was clear that we were in need of a strong Psychic type, so that meant that for Livio, Espeon was our evolution of choice. We also made a pit stop in Mount Mortar to get a Tyrogue, the Karate Kid himself, Jaden Christopher Sires Smith. On the stream that was very chaotic, we had to battle our rival for the last time, and I could comment on every single little detail of the fight against chat, using expressive and theatrical writing to plant an image that flourishes into beauty, but do you think he even had a chance against a man that looks like this? And so we arrived, the ultimate challenge for those seeking to become true Pokemon masters, the Elite Four. It was time to assemble the squad and figure out a strategy that would allow us to get through this with success. So let's meet the team. First off, we have Jaden Smith, who evolved into Hitmonlee during our grinding sessions. Next up, Livio the Espeon, finally ready to prove its worth. Our Gyarados Cursola Sadface after Magikarp had an unfortunate event. Patootie, our ever-versatile Special Sweeper Electabuzz, and finally 2 Pokemon that look a little different from the last time we checked in on them, as Gothilda was now a Gengar and Potato polished itself into a Golem. After stalling on stream for about 15 minutes, we made our way up and slammed the door shut behind us. There was no turning back now. The first battle was against the Psychic-type user Will. We didn't have a direct counter to Psychic Pokemon, but Patootie had coverage for all the secondary typings. So, as both Xatu and Electabuzz came out, Patootie made a quick chicken dinner out of the bird, frying it with a Thunderbolt. Jinx came up next, and you might be wondering how the hell do we have coverage for this? Well, just like the solution to Clair was to buy up Ice Punch, we bolstered Patootie's move pool by adding some fire to the Icy mix. Kinda like that one kid from that one anime. We struck first, but it didn't pack as much punch as we were expecting. Jinx survived, winked, and and threw a lovely kiss at us, putting Electabuzz to sleep and making us question her flirting abilities. The sleep was not something we were extremely concerned about, as we disposed an awakening to wake up Patootie. That consumed the turn where the questionably looking Pokemon used a Psychic Blast, dealing 45 damage, but most important of all, unfortunately dropping Electabuzz's special defense. The next turn we had our Retribution as we put Jinx down to sleep in our own way. Next up was Exeggutor, and this is where things started to get a bit dangerous. Very nonchalantly, I let Patootie in the battlefield, confident I would either knock out the Palm Tree with a single Fire Punch, or that I would be chonky enough to take whatever Will was going to send his way. The truth is, we got very lucky. Patootie dispatched another Flaming Fist, almost bringing down the opponent, but it was retaliated with a direct hit of Psychic that let Electabuzz with a very butt-clenching 23 HP. If that had been a critical hit, we were dead for sure, and one of the most important members would have been down even before the first Elite Four member was defeated. In theory, we could have outsped and one-shot every other Pokemon Will had, but I wasn't going to take any risks, especially so early in this phase. So we switched in Livio to tank the next Psychic and to use his very versatile arsenal to carry on offensively. We finished off the plant by chewing it up and spitting it out. Will sent out his second Xatu. My judgment was clearly affected by the pressure of the battle, since I could have just used Bite and taken down the green bird. Instead, I decided to fully heal Patootie, giving Will a chance to use a Confuse Ray, leaving Livio prone to hurting himself. And then again, like an idiot, instead of committing to my own tactic and switching back to Patootie, I decided to stay in with Livio and attempt a Bite, completely oblivious that Espeon was confused. Luckily enough, Livio also forgot he was confused and served some Kentucky Fried Condor. But if that was not enough of a Chad move, as the final Pokemon, Slowbro, came out, not only did he repeat the feat of not hurting himself, he did it twice, making it a total of 3 times in a row where things could have gone wrong and Livio went like, nah bro, I got this. And yeah, that was Will. In the next room, the Poison-type specialist Koga was awaiting our challenge. And I could comment on every single little detail of the fight against Koga, using expressive and theatrical writing to plant an image that flourishes into beauty, but do you think he even had a chance against a man who looks like this? The answer is still no, but it's kind of important for the narrative that I follow this through. Even though he did shine against Will, Koga was Livio's main target, and I was expecting much devastation from the sheer firepower he brought to the table. Koga led with Ariados, who had literally no chance. Being outsped and outleveled, a single Psychic took down the Spooder, handing the ninja his first casualty. Next up came Fortress, who was promptly dispatched by Livio's second-in-command, Patootie, with the ×4 Fire Punch right in between the eyes. Third was Venomoth, dead to Fire Punch, and as Muk came out, we recalled Patootie for Livio to make a resurgence of his own. A Psychic took down Muk, and the second one took down Koga's final Pokemon, Crobat. I probably should have just ended the bit on the hats. Koga was miles away from being a challenge. Suddenly, the door in the back of the room opens up, and we are irradiated by a flash of light. One would think that it was from the lava filling up the next arena, but deep down we all know that glow was coming from Bruno's glorious pecs. The chiseled physique, the mastery over fighting-type Pokemon, we couldn't be distracted by any of that. No matter how alpha he looks, he has to go down. And it was all in the hands of one purple boy. Insert a mandatory Beyblade joke as Hitmontop goes in, and we're off. All overused jokes aside, Hitmontop lasted as much as your average Beyblade battle. And not the cool ones from the anime with dragons and sparks and shit. More like the ones you held in recess and got your ass handed to you by an older kid simply because he throws harder than you. A single Psychic was enough to get it over with. Next up was Onyx, and we finally had a debut after exactly 11 Pokemon were defeated. Cursola's sad face was now looking to join the Hall of Fame after actually doing something. It wasn't something super hard to do, as a single serve took down the dismal Pokemon, but hey, it counts. From there, we only had to fight pure fighting Pokemon, so Gyarados went back into his ball and Livio came back in order to finish what he had started. Hitmonchan was first in line, and it actually dealt a whopping 10 whole points of damage to our Espeon as it hit a laughable attempt at a Mach Punch. A single Psychic was enough to quickly dispatch the Boxer. Out came Hitmonlee, the second to last of Bruno's Pokemon, but he shared the same fate as his predecessor, as Psychic made him drop to the ground in a single turn. Espeon kinda busted. Last but not least, Bruno sent, oh my god, what the fuck is that? Machamp came out, flailing his arms around like a Magikarp on dry land, which is ironic given the fact that a Magikarp would have had the exact same impact as Machamp did in this fight. If what I just said is indicative of anything, you guessed it, Livio kept his consistency of giving 0 chances to Bruno's team members. Outspeeding Machamp, a single hit of Psychic brought down the ace to culminate a bloodlusted performance by our purple cat. At this point, the only thing separating us from a fight against the champion was Karen and her Dark-type Pokémon. I say Dark-type Pokémon, but in reality what she has is this weird mix that doesn't really make sense to me. I can let Gengar slide, but I have no idea what Vileplume is doing there. She sends out her Umbreon, and in return we debut our star, Jaden Smith, in the role of Dre Parker in the 2010 blockbuster movie The Karate Kid. This first stage was where I thought things could possibly go sideways, at least a little bit. I'm not the biggest fan of Chance, and Chance isn't my biggest fan either, so knowing that I would have to rely on an 85 accuracy high jump kick that could not only miss but also hit my Pokemon back in recoil, left me slightly skeptical on the Deathless Karen. Still, it was the plan that we envisioned, and therefore it was the plan we were to execute. We chose our high risk high reward move, and it hit. Not only that, but it hit like an absolute chonker one-hit KO onto Umbreon, which caught me by surprise since I believe it had a much higher defense stat than what it was showcased. Who am I to complain though? Vileplume, the complete outlier of the team, came out afterwards. I accidentally pushed Livio into battle when I only wanted to check his stats and the PP on Psychic. But it really didn't matter much because he was also one of the options to take down the flower. A quick Psychic dealt with the toxic pollen spreading plant before it could even do anything. Next up, Murkrow, and I'll have you know that it didn't do anything. We swapped heavy hitters as Patootie replaced Livio, and with her delivering a Thunderbolt, the bird didn't stand a chance. At this point, it was also time for another debut, and Potato came up to explore Gengar's weakness to ground. With both trait evolutions on display, it was time to get down to business. Gengar is a speedy boy compared to Golem, and it cast a curse onto Potato. Potato retaliated with an Earthquake, swiftly bringing down the Gengar though. So bring on the big dog from hell. Let's see what it can do against our mighty boulder. As expected, a Hound is faster than a Pebble, and Houndoom used his sharp teeth to crunch on Potato. Even without a crit, it dealt a whopping 60 damage to him. Still, unfazed, Potato made the ground underneath him start to shake. Houndoom's legs and defense started to crack, trying to find a footing on the pressure of the trembling soil. But to no avail. Golem's Earthquake brought down Houndoom and sealed the final nail in Karen's coffin. The Elite Four were beaten, and the only thing that was standing between me and my crowning was the champion himself, Lance. Clair's fight was a good showcase that our team was not the best suited to deal with Dragon-type Pokemon. The thing is that, things weren't exactly the same as the fight against Clair. Now we had a couple of advantages that we didn't have before. First of all, our team is, in general, a lot stronger than when we presented. We could use all of our 6 Pokemon, and we could even let some of them die for safe switches into more suitable adversaries. Second, instead of Dragonairs, Lance has 3 Dragonites, which gain a secondary type of flying. This means that Patootie's only Ice move hits half of Lance's team harder than what it would against the lower stage Pokemon of the same evolutionary line, simply because it's 4 times weak instead of just 2 times weak. Finally, analyzing the rest of his Pokemon, we have a Charizard, a Gyarados, and an Aerodactyl. The first two, especially the Gyarados, would have a hard time against Electabuzz due to Stab Thunderbolt. The one I was most scared of was in fact a prehistoric fossil, because it hits really hard and also really fast. At the same time, Patootie's defensive prowess is far from being the best one out there, and as you can see, I was putting all my eggs into a single basket. A single miscalculation in which Electabuzz goes down will make a Pepest here for the rest of the battle. And as soon as the battle began, a miscalculation happened. I don't know how I missed it, but before we started the battle against Lance, I healed all my Pokemon, I adjusted held items, I restored all missing PP. Did I bring Patootie up front? But I forgot to change my leading Pokemon. Lance promptly sent out Gyarados, whilst out of all things, out of our hand came out movie star Jaden Smith in the role of Dre Parker in the 2010 blockbuster movie The Karate Kid. We had to adapt to the situation that we put ourselves into. Jaden Smith couldn't do much to face the Gyarados, meaning that we'd had to find a way to safely and swiftly switch into Electabuzz on a turn where he couldn't be hurt by any of its attacks. And this could have meant a sacrifice on our end, if not for a certain ghost that had been lurking in the shadows for this whole time. There was one Pokemon that was yet to debut in this final stretch of the Johto League, and she refused to get into the Hall of Fame without a single appearance. Gyarados' move pool consists of Rain Dance, Hyper Beam, Flail, and Surf. That means that there's a 1 in 4 chance that would switch into a move that would actually hurt Cathilda. Switching her in was the first step towards recovery. Our Gengar replaced Hitmonlee, and Gyarados used Rain Dance, making droplets fall from the skies above. Save switch number 1 was complete, but this did not mean that we were out of the danger zone just yet. At this point, we guaranteed that Jaden Smith wouldn't fall to the Gyarados, but as things stood, a critical hit Stab Surf with the extra boost provided by Rain Dance had a very high likelihood of one-shotting Gothilda on her range. In order to save her, we had to rely on a 60 accuracy hypnosis, which I wasn't super comfortable in doing, but gambling on putting Gyarados to sleep was the only possibility that could guarantee a deathless fight against Lance. So, we both shot our shots. And Gothilda, in an unexpected turn-up, put herself in a position of life or death and hit the hypnosis onto Gyarados, putting it to sleep, saving a teammate from falling, and allowing the battle to be reset to the point we planned it out to be. Now, it was time for the fated Patootie showdown. Next turn, Patootie replaced Gothilda with a sense of a job well done. In the meantime, Gyarados remained sleeping. Next up, Patootie charged the Thunderbolt, one-shotting Gyarados with a 4x weakness move as Lance took his first casualty. The champion must have felt really nervous at that point, because his strategy from there on out was to throw whatever Dragonite he had available to try and stop the oncoming Electabuzz onslaught. Problem for him is that we came prepared with the exact same weapons that proved fruitful against his pupil Clair. An Ice-type move on a special sweeper holding Never Melt Ice. One by one, the 3 Dragonites came, and one by one they shared the same fate. Patootie was both the unstoppable force and the immovable object. At that point, the confidence was at an all-time high. I was struggling more on keeping a tower stack on top of my head than Patootie was against this so-called ultimate enemy. But the fight wasn't over just yet, and up next came the biggest mystery and possible bump on the road. Aerodactyl stood before us whilst we were completely oblivious to his potential danger. Could we outspeed it? If we did, could we bring it down immediately? If not, would Patootie survive a single hit? Could we wipe to a single Pokemon that just hits really fast and really hard? Only one way to find out. Patootie was to stay in battle. If anyone was to be faster than Aerodactyl, it would be her. So we selected Thunderbolt and hoped for the best. And the best came through. Electabuzz gained more speed than the prehistoric flyer, and with a single zap of electricity, dropped its HP from 100% to 0%, and dissipated what we believed to be the biggest threat to our run. The final Pokemon that was standing in our way is the most overrated starter there is in existence. Dealing with Charizard would be no more than cordiality, and trusting in our situation, we had the time and opportunity to renew our gown to tip-top performance. The crowning was upon us, and the hats had to be stacked perfectly. Patootie did as she accustomed us, a swift Thunderbolt. And it is, in fact, a dub. We got it, boys. And the stack fell. So much for being presentable. Fuck. We had our tough moments, dumb losses, butt-clenching situations, but this run was an overall success. Not only was it a load of fun, but I think that despite some unfortunate and miscalculated scenarios, we ended up with a team that was not only respectable, but in fact pretty freaking strong. We had Pokemon that had been sitting on the sidelines like Clivio and Jaden Smith, grinding for their peak and finding their place into the Hall of Fame. There was Cursola Sadface, who came out to replace a fallen team member, Patootie, whose sheer firepower and eclecticism got us out of many nasty situations, and Pokemon who had been with us almost from the very start, having witnessed and partaken in every high and low, those being the likes of Gothilda and Potato. And that's how my first Nuzlocke of Pokemon Crystal ended. It was fun to revisit the generation that I sunk most of my hours into back when I was younger. There's something about Johto that's super captivating to me. I know it's not the most beloved gen out there, but it's one that I appreciate and I will always remember fondly. And with that being said, I hope you have enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you all on the next one. Peace.